Uh-oh, that's not the right screen to be looking at. Well, hello everyone. While I fix this real quick here. Nope, not that screen. There we go. That's the screen we like seeing. Hello and welcome to everyone. Yes, as you can see, I've done some rearranging in my office, and as a result, one, I got this desk that I've got to somehow hide from everyone's view, but two, apparently my monitors have switched around on me, so I had to get that fixed real quick, so you'd actually see John and I instead of a health of how my stream is doing right now. But I hope everyone is doing great on this Tuesday, the first day of September. We are talking about Season 1, Episode 4 of SeaQuest, which was called Treasures of the Mind, which, it was a fun episode. I think it was better than last week's, but let's go ahead and dive into how the synopsis of the episode with John DiMarco taking away. How you doing today, John?
Fine, thanks. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And also hello to everyone in the chat before we get going here. Dean Rogers, if you're still around, hi. I mean, I don't think I've seen you on the stream before, but man, you were here from forever ago, and apparently it is crazy early in the morning where you are, which, I mean, I'm glad you're here. If you're still around, I hope that you get to stick around and have fun. And at the same time, there's a part of me that is just like, man, go to bed. The stream will keep. Take care of your health, my friend. But I'm certainly glad if you're still around. And I'm glad to see that you've been having fun and that John was able to kind of chit-chat with you for a little bit there. Hello to Robert Green. Robert Green, so I never really put this together before. I've seen you in the chat, but my great-grandma was a Green. And so I wonder if somewhere in the annuals of time we're distantly related. She was up in Arkansas, the northwest corner of Arkansas, a place called Heber Springs and Tumbling Shoals toward the end of her life. So that'd be cool. You never know. Like I got so many random family members that there's cousins that I know I don't know exist, but they're out there. Cinnabon Bunny, how are you doing tonight? This John DiMarco fellow, glad to see you around in the chat. And Jeff Franklin, how are you doing, my friend? Okay, let's start talking about the episode. John, take this away. How did this episode go?
Well, at the beginning of the episode, SeaQuest seems to be doing some kind of excavation off the coast of Egypt. They have a Egyptian historian on board, and there's several artifacts they've found that they've been examining. The strange thing is that the artifacts come from many different time periods and civilizations. So it seems odd that they'll all be found in one place.
And the guy who was the guest star of the week, his name is T'Pol in real life. That's I looked up his actor credits. Or the credits for what his name was, and he's just listed as T'Pol, which I thought was an interesting thing because, he obviously isn't T'Pol from Enterprise. For one thing, he's a he. But it was interesting because when I looked him up, he is Fiddler on the Roof. If you've ever seen that amazing movie about a man who is in, I believe it's Russia, in some sort of Slavic country, and he's a Jewish guy, and kind of going over his life there. It's a musical, but he played the same actor. And so once I looked that up, like the voice clicked with me, and it made for a fun moment for me. One of the other things is, as they're looking at these artifacts, it has no bearing on the episode, but it was just one of those things that sticks in your craw, He started to talk about Isis, the Greek goddess. Or excuse me, the Egyptian goddess Isis. And I just know YouTube is having a heyday with me saying the word Isis 3 times right there. But he made a comment about how, she was giving the promise of a better afterlife thousands of years before Christianity existed. And it was one of those things that annoyed me largely because they've been doing their homework all over the place for this show so far. And I was sad to see them drop the ball on this line because ISIS, there's got to be a better thing for me to keep than for me to keep saying that word. This Egyptian goddess, she was not really known for that for most of her pre-zero BC life, as it were. Like, she was barely mentioned thousands of years before Christ came onto the scene, and it was only within a couple hundred years that she really got her own temple, even in Egypt. And her actual thing wasn't necessarily offering people a better life. It was demonstrating to Egyptian women what a good wife should be. You know, cooking, cleaning, supporting things in the background, and being quiet is how she was portrayed in the Egyptian texts. And so it was one of those things where I'm like, that's not really the case. And I mean, even beyond that, a lot of people don't understand that Christianity is really just a sect of Judaism. That Christianities are the Jewish faith that believes that Christ is the Messiah. And so trying to be like, well, it was pre-Christianity is like, well, I think you're misunderstanding your history, but neither here nor there. It's just one of those things that like stuck out to me. Yeah, just say ice. Yeah, okay, I'll just say ice. And yeah, oh gosh, I was looking up because I'm like, I knew just a little bit about her because ancient mythology, the Greek gods, the Roman gods is one of my hobbies, or at least it was when I was a younger man. I'm like, that doesn't sound right for Miss Ice. And so I looked it up, and one of the things they mentioned for her backstory was that, she was the mother of Horus, who, I mean, interesting thing there, if they wanted to go this way, is they could have mentioned that it appears that the early paintings of the Virgin Mary with the Child Christ were basically ripoffs of of Ice with Horus. Very, very much inspired, as it were. But her husband died at one point, was murdered by her brother, and that's where mummies came from, because she used healing magic to bring him back, brought all the pieces together, except she couldn't find his manhood, as it were. And so through some magical hijinks, she was able to reconstitute it from nothing. So, I mean, there's so many fun things they could have done with this, and it was sad that they totally missed it completely on that. Anyway, John, I'm sorry, I went off on a little rabbit trail there, but that was one of the interesting things that I do enjoy a show like this. That makes me stop and kind of be like, wait, is that accurate? Because they're doing a good job of showing mostly accurate things, like the sucking away the sand, uncover stuff was mostly accurate. Not very accurate the way they pulled it out, and like now here's all this stuff that was underwater, and they just pull it up out of the water and like, yay, now we're looking at it. I'm like, oh gosh, you couldn't do that. You need clean rooms, and you need to be very careful in transitioning it, and all sorts of good stuff. Anyway, go on, John. What happened after they were looking at this stuff with all things from all over the globe and kind of time periods?
As you mentioned, they're using some kind of device to like blow away the sand that's uncovering some more of the ruins. And they uncover some big statues. Some kind of a large structure that looks to be mostly intact. And they discover what is apparently the lost library from Alexandria. They explain later that there was a huge earthquake that sank part of the library, like about 2,000 years ago, and apparently some of it was preserved in the sand.
And that's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, I'm not an archaeologist, but John, do you know, like, how grounded in reality is that? Like, I think that the quicksand, like they're saying there was an earthquake, and the earthquake caused an area to basically turn into quicksand for a short amount of time, which I think that holds up to scrutiny. I mean, you certainly see in modern times like giant potholes, humongous potholes, just all of a sudden open up in an earthquake. But do you think it would actually preserve things?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah, me neither. Maybe someone in the chat is like an amateur archaeologist, and they can put in their 2 cents on whether or not that would make sense. Because it was like the entire library, except for one section, as we'll see in a second here, the entire library was basically buried and sealed in a layer of mud and silt. So maybe it held it. Like they talked about it being like a refrigerator under this when everything's buried under the sea, and we certainly find plenty of artifacts under the sea. Um, the only thing that like gave me some pause was the artifacts that they're going to be most interested in throughout the rest of the show are papyrus or paper type artifacts, and that's where I'm like, ooh, what would that seal as well as we're hoping, or be sustained as well as we're presenting here? And Jeff Franklin saying that we need John Luke. Yeah, yeah, we do. So what happens? What happens as they're uncovering this huge find?
Oh, they're using this VR probe thing that they have to take a closer look at the ruins, and they managed to find there's an air pocket where there's an entire room that has been the sea's been kept out this whole time, and everything in there is apparently very well preserved.
And then, as kind of part of finding this, we're introduced to the B plot of the episode, which is no sooner do they find this stuff than every everyone's trying to stake a claim on it, and they can't figure out how. Like the Algerians and the Israelites and Palestinians and everyone in the area, the Grecians. How do you say people from Greece?
I think just Greeks.
The Greece people. That sounds like a slur, like something from the 50s. You'd be like, yeah, that greaser over there, which is something totally different. I know, but it sounds like there should be something else. But anyway, like everyone's somehow immediately found out about this, and so it appears they have a mole on board, and that's.
Yes, and the
Yeah, go on.
sorry. The Captain Bridger talks to the admiral about it, and that they want Captain Bridger to negotiate between all these people who are showing up to claim the artifacts from the library, and also they talk about the leak and how the admiral's going to send a team of negotiators to help settle the disagreements over the artifacts. These aren't just any investigators; these are apparently people who are trained in using ESP.
Which, when they show up, they call their abilities like a psi factor or psi power.
Yeah, they say they have a psi factor.
Psi factor. Okay, so when they made that line, it really made me wonder if they meant for episode 3, last week's episode, to be reversed with this week's episode. Because it would make a lot of sense, like, to lay down the groundwork that there are psychics in this universe, and not just psychics as in, put on a funny hat and, close your eyes and moan a little bit and read someone's palm, but like actual, like, mind reader type psychics in this SeaQuest universe. And Jeff is saying Greeks. Yes, the Greeks. That is the word I was looking for. It was painfully obvious and something I completely slipped on there.
Yes, I think it would have made more sense for the last 2 episodes that we swapped around.
Yeah. And
I'll
Dean
explain later.
Dean is here. He's saying, I've got an MA in history and I'm Christian, but I don't know how you would find what you're needing. I've already forgot what I was asking, Dean. Are you talking about like whether something could be preserved that well under the sea? Yeah, I'm not sure how either. Yes, Grecians. That's what I'm going to call them from now on. Grecians. So go on, John.
Regarding the whole psi factor thing, they do explain a little bit later in the episode that they're not. They say they're not exactly mind readers. It's more like they get intuitions and feelings and hints, and sometimes they do read things wrong.
Mm-hmm. But you actually see them read anything wrong in the episode?
Well, there was one thing that was intentional, but other than that, it would seem no.
Yeah, it seemed almost like they definitely said that, and you had one guy saying, it's kind of potluck, and oh my goodness, I just made the connection for why they were saying that, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. So we will circle back around to that, and at the end if I can remember. But one of the funny things is when they bring on these Psi Factor people, you had the old security chief guy who he keeps walking into people who are like trying to go and clear their mind because they don't want their minds read by these Psi Factor people, and he's like he's so done with it. They only do it for one scene, but it made for a funny scene where he's like, "Yeah, you got nothing to worry about. No one wants to be reading your mind. Get a move on." He goes chasing after someone else, and then he's the one who actually greets the Psi Factor people, and like each time he turns around, they're kind of prodding him a little bit and making jokes. Like one guy needs a hand, and he's like, "You read my mind," and like the Shuri guy is kind of getting unnerved by that statement, and then he's like, "Well, we're gonna cut through this spot on the way to the." And they jump in like the wardroom, and he's like, "How did you know? Were you reading my mind?" And the camera pans up, and there's like a giant sign saying "wardroom" above his head. It was two small moments, but it's definitely moments like that are making me appreciate the show because they have genuine nuggets of humor like that interlaced throughout it. And
Yeah, I
Dean,
liked how they were messing with him.
Dean, I appreciate it. You certainly don't have to. I certainly do appreciate anything you want to send this way. I do have a link to. I have a StreamYards link and a Patreon down in the description of this video if you wanted to. And yeah, thank you, John, for putting that there. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be stumbling over myself here. I get a little embarrassed when people actually want to do that, but I'm very appreciative. Anyway, before I dive embarrassment over here, John, why don't we continue with the episode?
So yeah, so there's the three psychics. There's an older man. There's his daughter. There's another fellow. So they talk to Bridger about what they can do and how they're going to help him try to figure out what's going on in the negotiations, so they can try to settle everything as smoothly as possible.
And one of the things that I just realized that we forgot about was there was a moment in at the beginning of this where Lucas had a literal wet dream. And I confess, John, I'm a bit of a prude in real life. I don't like that sort of thing in general. But this episode was kind of cringy on that. And when I say wet dream, he was literally dreaming he was underwater, completely wet, following after. What's her rank? Lieutenant Hitchcock, I believe it was.
I think she's Lieutenant Commander.
Lieutenant Commander Hitchcock, and he's following her underwater, and she's swimming, and the camera was very deliberate in its placement, as you get a view down blouse of her basically. And this episode really kind of it was kind of creepy on Lucas this week. Like he clearly has a thing for Lieutenant Commander Hitchcock, but the way they kind of presented that, I don't know, it was kind of weird to me.
Yeah, I thought that subplot was not necessary in the episode at all.
I tried to avoid spoilers, but I gotta know, John, did they develop the fact that he kind of has a thing for her over time?
No, they don't.
Okay, so it was literally just.
I seem to recall there was actually a deleted scene for this episode where she finds out about it, confronts him about it. It says basically, "I'm flattered, but we need to keep it professional."
Okay, then yeah, it just. I guess they were trying to fill in some dead time. This week certainly wasn't the fastest paced episode, but I did enjoy it. Sorry, I keep just derailing you this week. I have a lot of thoughts about the episode. So they convene this panel or this what do you call it? A summit of the different
Mm-hmm.
nations who are involved with the artifacts under the ocean.
Yeah, then there's different people from different countries are all arguing about what they want. You know, the psychics are giving Bridger advice about this person wants this and this person wants that. And with that knowledge, he's able to smooth over most of the disagreements.
Which
There's one fellow from the Libyans who he was threatened to leave if he doesn't get what he wants. The psychics say he's bluffing, but it turns out he's not, and he just storms out.
yeah, and so that character, which I just realized we haven't done our weekly shield for Peacock TV. Anyone who wants to, you can go watch this series for free with us on Peacock.tv. And if you do, you will see that the actor who played kind of the antagonistic diplomat for the Algerians or Libyans, that actor was the actor from was it Mr. Deeds, the Adam Sandler version. He was the one who was helping out Adam Sandler through most of the movie, and he was also the dad in Stargate, in the movie of the Egyptian woman who was offered up to Daniel Jackson as a nightly comfort, as you will. Kind of, he became the girl became the wife, but he was the dad of that girl, of Daniel Jackson's wife.
He was also in a few episodes of Star Trek.
Was he really?
Yeah, for example, he was in an episode of DS9 playing a Bajoran. Yeah, I think it was the episode with they're building the communications relay through the wormhole. There's the Cardassians and the ancient prophecy. Does that sound familiar at all?
A little bit.
He
I
thinks
can
that
easily
the
see his
Cardassians-
face, but I can't place him in the episode.
Yeah, he warns that the Cardassians are going to come and destroy the wormhole because of this ancient prophecy that he read.
Oh, okay, yes. I
With
never
the
put
three
together
Vipers.
that was the same actor.
Yeah.
And Dean, don't worry about it. Honestly, with the Streamlab stuff or Streamlab stuff, you shouldn't have to. They shouldn't make you sign up for anything, but don't worry about it. I am already touched that you wanted to at all, so don't worry about it. I'm very thankful. And one of the funny things, first the funny thing about this summit, it gives a message like it's a secure location somewhere in Alexandria, Egypt. And right as they're putting that on the screen, you see a random guy with a camel walking by. And I'm like, okay, either the person who wrote this was a little bit racist and was like, okay, Egypt equals camels, or he was a little bit racist and was like, someone from the Middle East would have had to take a camel to get here. But either way you cut it, like the fact that they're at this super secure summit with the top diplomats from each of their nations, and each of these places have like a navy that is actively sitting over the library find, and yet for some reason one of them has a camel that needs to be carted through. So that made me laugh in general. But the second thing that I actually really appreciated about this scene is this is how Deanna Troi should have been treated throughout all of TNG. Where instead of her giving this vague, like, you have a guy who has a blood vessel about to burst on his head, he's so mad, and she goes, "Captain, I feel that he's angry." Like the way that the three psychics leaned in and gave advice, and even warned that, it's not always accurate, it's kind of a potluck, hit and miss kind of thing. Like, that's exactly how a general psychic should be treated, I felt like. Like, I would have loved to see Deanna Troi have that sort of level of accuracy and just like, hey, here's the little thing that maybe you need to get through this negotiation. And hey, also to LDG Pixels, how are you doing? And Tiki of Doom, welcome. I don't know how, but they found me, Marty. the Libyans. And hey, you sleep well. Dean. I'm glad you were able to stop by and listen to a little bit of it tonight. So they're at this summit and they're getting the advice, and it kind of works. Like, he's able to quickly identify this person. They're concerned about if they leave the artifacts with you, are they going to get paid? This person, he just got married. He doesn't care what we come up with. Come up with anything, he'll sign off. He just wants to get home to his new wife. And this person over here, they're worried about if the museum will travel, stuff like that. And so they do kind of a good job. Like, here's a passage of time. They don't do a fade in, fade out, crossfade stuff. It's just like, here's presentation, and then they quickly come to the end to kind of show the passage of, like, okay, they've been going over things and they hit a point of breakdown.
Yeah, so we said before the Libyan guy storms off, and so because of that, all the negotiations break down. And later we see that the daughter, her name was Savannah, I believe, she's confronting her dad. Says, "Why did you lie to him? Because you knew what you said was wrong. Why are you trying to mess things up?" And he won't really tell her. But what he does tell her is that she needs to do her job. But one of those things is trying to read Captain Bridger's mind.
Right.
So that night she tries to.
Because at that point you find out that the real reason they're there. Or do you find that out right now, or they wait a little bit before revealing this?
I think it's kind of implied. They can explain it more later on.
Okay. Well,
yeah, the real reason they're there is to figure out where's the leak coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently they've been scanning the minds of the crew, and now it's apparently Bridger's turn. The difference is when she tries to read Bridger's mind, he can tell what's going on. Sure, nobody else noticed. So he confronts her about it. And apparently he has low level psychic ability as well.
And at that point, that's when they kind of come clean with the fact that they don't want to be doing this anymore, per se. That they just kind of want to retire. They want to be on a beach with no one else around and read a book. And I feel like that is why they said it's not entirely reliable. That it's all potluck. They made claims that they weren't able to be super accurate, but then every time you see them use it, they're actually being precisely accurate with their readings. And at first I thought it was just like maybe a bad writing moment where they said one thing, but the opposite ended up being true. But now as I was talking here with you, John, I realized they were intentionally trying to sabotage themselves. Like, they were trying to make it look as if they are incompetent, because they think that if they're incompetent, then the UEO will leave them alone from now on.
Yeah, I recall the older fellow. He came from the Soviet Union. He said he fled to America for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it was so ingrained to him not to question authority. When they keep asking him for his help, he just couldn't say no. The only thing he could think of was to try to appear like he couldn't do it anymore. That's the only way to get them off his back.
And then Bridger responds with a great line about how you can always say no. No. And he kind of has this moral speech that would be right at home in an episode of TNG.
Right. This is freedom is a muscle. You have to exercise it.
Yes. And so at that point, Bridger offers to basically help them out. Like, get me through the summit, and we will work things out. Oh, and also with all this going on, we have another scene with Lucas and Hitchcock. But I'll say this. Even though Lucas was being, he was being a super creep. Like, at the beginning of the episode, after his dream, he's working out in the same room as Hitchcock, and he's just creep staring at her the whole time she's working out. And it was very cringe to watch, but even with all that, Lucas is being a more likable character than Wesley is in Star Trek. I could see this and being like, okay, you know what? Lucas is a young adolescent male. and he is being creepy. You know, fortunately, not every guy does it, but there are plenty enough young guys who go through that kind of discovering the world sort of thing. And so at least that is something that is relatable, even if it is creepy. And we just pray that someone like Captain Bridger will take him aside, explain to him that he's being a creepy creep, and he will put a stop to it, you know? And so we actually got a great moment of interaction between him and Lucas, where it wasn't about Lucas being a creep, because I don't think Bridger was aware of it really. But we do get a moment where Lucas is like wanting to go over and help out with the research because he wants to be around Hitchcock. And he's like, I was thinking I was just doing it. And Bridger's like, you need to ask permission. You never know when someone's going to say yes. And so he's like, can I go? And Bridger's like, yeah, get going. And so it's like this real nice, almost father-son kind of moment between the two of them. So I'm liking the character development that's going on with Lucas and Bridger. And while Lucas is over there, the Libyans attack. Or the Algerians, whoever
Lucas goes over. Yeah, then Bridger goes over with Savannah, and he lets her read his mind. But at that point, the Libyans attack. They drill a hole in the library, and the water starts pouring in.
So, okay, maybe I was just already being hypersensitive because Lucas was being a creep, but the way she presented those sentences to Captain Bridger just came off so cringy to me. She's like, before I go, will you open yourself completely to me? And then he's like, oh, okay. She's like, yes, that's it. Just relax. Let it happen. Don't resist. And it's over here like, my goodness, how creepy are you going to make this episode before you're done?
If I was in his position, I'd be saying, absolutely not.
Yeah. I mean, this is getting a little too forced sounding. Like, if this was a intimate action and not a reading my mind action, I'd feel very Me Too'd at this moment. But I do kind of wonder if my mind went there so readily simply because Lucas had been kind of creepy throughout the episode. So he does open up his mind, and they do have like this moment. And as he's having this moment, he like psychically picks up the Libyans or something.
Yeah, he senses danger. Then right after that, the big hole, drill a big hole, and the water starts pouring in. They were going to actually put in explosives, but SeaQuest chased them off before they could do that.
Mm-hmm.
However, in retaliation, the Libyan ship overhead starts dropping depth charges. So in response, SeaQuest launches a torpedo at him, which hits them directly, but it's not armed. It says if you don't leave, the next one will be armed.
Mm-hmm. Which was kind of gutsy on their part. I mean, we saw in the first episode how SeaQuest showing up was enough to make like 5 other subs in the water immediately turn tail, or at least be held at bay. Just SeaQuest showing up all by itself was a strong enough presence to just de-escalate everything immediately. So I was wondering, well, maybe it's because they were a surface ship dropping depth charges. They were more willing to do this. But even then, I mean, in real life, during World War II, you would see like destroyers in groups of 3 going after a single U-boat to kind of corner it, simply because of how dangerous it was to go after a sub. So I think they made a bad choice, I guess is what I'm saying. But they did quickly disengage when they saw that their plan had been fruitless. And then we get the whole scene with Admiral Noyce and the psychics and Bridger saying that he's going to help them out. And they reconvene at the summit. Is that the next thing that happens?
Yes. Although I think the Admiral explains where the leak. They finally figured out where the leak was coming from. It wasn't coming from the ship, at least not directly. Apparently, the doctor was talking to one of her colleagues, and somebody on that end was giving away the information.
Okay.
Yeah, but then they go back to the summit. They managed to get the Libyans and the others back at the table. And Bridger gives another kind of Captain Picard type speech.
Yeah.
He talks about the importance of this historical artifacts. But so how are we going to handle it? Are we going to argue about it? Are we going to fight over it? Go to war over it? So he takes one of the artifacts and smashes it on the table. There, if you want to fight over it, there you can go ahead and pick up the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Or instead, we can sit down and try to hammer it out, so we can benefit everyone.
And at that point, he brings out a second artifact that appeared to be living in nature, and he passes it down to them, and they very reverently look at it and decide that he's like, you have two choices. You can either walk off with this artifact, or you can smash it yourself and be done with it. Or no, he said you can either pass it back down, or you can choose to smash it yourself and be done with it. And at that point, the Libyans decide to sit back down at the table and work some sort of agreement out on how they were going to handle all these artifacts. And hey, Tim, how are you doing?
At this point, Bridger even says, I'd rather destroy the library than sacrifice any lives over it. And he's prepared to fire torpedoes at it and blow the whole thing up.
Yeah.
If they can't come to an agreement over it.
And with that, the episode more or less ends. We get one last scene where we see that the psychics are heading out to Spain, and the daughter, Savannah, was it?
Yes.
She was going to. Was it that just she was going to retire for a month, or was it implied that the dad would have a month off and then he'd feel the call of adventure and be right back at it again?
I get the impression it was all of them.
Okay. It was kind of just that they were learning how to say no. And by learning to say no, it granted them freedom so that they were willing to keep doing the job because they realized they didn't have to do the job. And then Savannah, kind of out of nowhere, kisses Bridger before she leaves for Spain. I think that was the end of the episode, right?
Yeah, that was it.
So I had a lot of fun with it. It was definitely a slower episode, but one of the things I really liked about this episode is it really made me feel like I was watching TNG. A lot of times in TNG, you would see the A plot being some sort of science fiction element. The ship encountered some random thing, and an error is starting to build up that will eventually destroy the ship. And so that's kind of the A plot as they diagnose that. But then in TNG, they'd have this B plot where there'd be some sort of interaction going on with the crew behind the scenes that presented some sort of morality issue to wrestle with. And that's exactly what we got in this episode, where the A plot was not science fiction, it was more socio-political, and what nation would get which stuff. But the B plot held this moral quandary over, one, what is the nature of freedom, where these people came from the Soviet Union to America, and yet, or I guess Russia technically for the time, to America, and yet they felt just as trapped because they hadn't learned to say no. And at the same time, is it morally ethical for them to be reading people's mind? Is that a gross invasion of privacy? And those were kind of some things that were going on in the background of the series, or in the episode. And Tim is asking, did I notice that the guy who played the Libyan ambassador was the guy that was in every other movie and series? Yes, we talked about that. In fact, John was mentioning that he showed up in a DS9 episode or two, and I had never made that connection. I always thought of him as the Stargate SG-1 guy.
I think he was in The Mummy as well.
Yes, at least one of them. The one with Brandon Fraser, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was in the Tom Cruise one. What about you, John? What were some things that you really enjoyed in this episode?
I liked the kind of the moral debates they had. But one, how to deal with the library. How do you split up something that so many different people have claims on? How do you deal with the issue of telepathy?
Hmm.
Is it like the older guy said? Is it okay to do it if they don't know you're doing it, or
Hmm.
is it inherently wrong whether they know or not? And the the lady tells a story about how she helped save some kid by invading this mind of this guy who had kidnapped him.
Hmm.
But she feels wrong about it on one hand, but she feels that she's doing good on the other hand. That's the kind of thing that she always struggles with.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned that, they really did do a good job at not giving us an answer in the show. Uh, you see that the dad is very much kind of one extreme of it. That as long as they don't know, then it doesn't matter. He actually reiterates that 2 or 3 times throughout the episode. Like if they don't know it, it's like it never happened. Um, if Bridgers has this high psi factor, it doesn't matter because he's unaware of it. So it's as if it wasn't even there. Whereas the daughter was kind of more of a nuanced middle ground. And by the end of the episode, Bridger was almost the opposite extreme, that any sort of mind reading without explicit permission is morally unjust.
Because I noticed that his final meeting when he resolved the issues, he didn't use any advice from the psychic. That was all him. And
That's
he said
right.
it had bothered him the first time that they were doing, they were invading people's minds. He let it get by because he thought it was helping, but later saying it really was wrong if you think about it.
I missed that
So in the end, he
completely.
resolved it all by himself.
Yeah, I totally missed that. You're 100% right. That he did that, and that's great writing. That's actually showing some consistent character growth there. And on good writing, one of the things that I liked about the episode was on my second watch through, I started to pick up a lot of kind of subtle hints that from the very beginning that they weren't there to help with the summit, that they were there for a totally different reason. And it's things that were totally, you never would have caught them the first time watching through, but once you knew their motivation, a couple of sentences they said, you're like, oh, that's the deeper meaning to this sentence. And let's see, Tim was asking, did we notice that Ted Raimi's character exhibits some psi abilities too? Unfortunately, they don't do much with that later. Oh, and this John DiMarco guy, he's saying that we saw that last week. That John guy seems to know this series pretty well. I think I'm hilarious.
Yeah, he's a total loser.
Wait till I'm done sipping before you say that. I almost sprayed my screen.
I also like Captain Bridger in particular because he gave a couple of great speeches in this episode.
Oh gosh, I want to ask you so many things. I'm not going to though. I'm hoping that they continue that because he does seem to be kind of in the same vein as Picard, to be honest. He certainly has a military background, but at the same time, he has interests beyond military. He seems to be more of a diplomat when it comes to resolving issues. So those are kind of the good things in the episode that you saw. I've been talking about the good things as they come up because I can't help it. What were kind of some bad points for you for this episode?
As we said before, creepy Lucas was kind of a bad thing.
Creepy Lucas was
I think
so
they kind of
creepy.
dragged down the rest of the episode. I think it's a good episode, but I think it would have been better if they just left those parts out.
Yeah. We also got a weird moment. I guess I'm not sure if I'd call this bad per se. It was really only bad in light of Lucas was being so creepy, and then you got the Me Too moment against Captain Bridger, where Savannah did her whole just open your mind to it, just relax, just accept it. But then you also had this moment where Commander Ford reached around Lieutenant Commander Hitchcock when she was in the hyper reality VR set and controlling it, and they're like trying to see up above the water. Hitchcock came around and like reached around her and grabbed her arms. It was like guiding her arms to guide the VR probe or hyper reality probe, which just those three things they didn't age well. And you know, by itself, I don't like the Ford thing didn't bother me. It was just the in context of the other things that happened that made me be like, oh, that's not a great thing to have. But I did get the feeling they haven't come out and said it, but I've gotten the feeling over the past 4 episodes that Ford and Hitchcock have a bit of a thing going on, perhaps.
And you want me to confirm or deny that?
I do not want you to confirm or deny that. I was thinking if you would off the cuff, but I don't. I don't want you to. It seems like there's been a couple little hints here and there. So we'll see if I'm picking up hints that are there or if I'm fabricating things. What about things that struck you as blasé, kind of meh, the so-so stuff? Was there anything that stuck out to you as a moment where you went, "Oh, well, that's the thing they did. I don't really care one way or the other about it."
Nah, I don't know. I mean, they talked about a lot of historical stuff. I did like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like history, but I can see how some of that might slow it down for some people. Like about the art of this artifact, that artifact, the other artifact. Where did it come from? What influence does it have?
So I actually really like that stuff.
Yeah, I like that too, but I mean, that might not be appealing to some people.
It certainly might not. And I do understand there that especially people younger than us might have a hard time with the pacing of the show because they're doing a lot of groundwork for each episode. It seems like in this episode, you had the opening scene where T'Pol's character he mentioned this is from here, this from here. Look, a menorah. Look, a clay tablet just like the one Moses got. This is all over the place. And then they reiterated that during the first summit. And then the second summit, during Bridger's great speech, he made a point of saying, like, yeah, look, let's be honest. The problem here is that everyone in this area has a common cultural ancestor. And over time, that ancestry has been broken up into little tribes of this person was here and this person is there. And so we have all these artifacts that have a shared culture heritage, and yet they're also distinct, and everyone wants a piece of it. And so by establishing it during the first summit and the beginning scene, just all where everything came from, it gave that speech at the end a bigger impact. It was more impactful because we laid down the groundwork. But I do understand that there would probably be quite a few people who found those to be moments that dragged down the show. I liked it a lot, but I do see what you're saying, that it would drag down in some people's mind.
Also, it's kind of a little side bit. I don't think we mentioned it yet. That apparently, Commander Ford was just really excited to be finding all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Apparently, he's been a career military dude, but he's actually doing something, scientific. It really excited him.
Yeah, it was quite the moment for him to make this, basically the biggest archaeological discovery of all time. Which I'd get that. Like, I'm just a programmer, but if I made some huge archaeological discovery, I'd be pretty stoked. I'd enjoy my 15 minutes of fame. And Tim wants to know, is it just me, or does Hitchcock have really weird eyes? Do you mean shape or color? Because I want to say she had like really light, very, very light blue eyes. But I don't remember anything about the shape. The color? I don't know. I'd call them unique. It's definitely, like, usually when you have blue eyes, it's a deeper blue. I don't know, John, did you notice anything like that?
I didn't notice anything, no.
One of the weird things to me is I wish we were starting to get more justification for Captain Bridger's power. So in this episode, one of the things they talked about is once all the ships were coming in, T'Pol made a impassioned plea that Bridger would stop the people from just basically making a run on all the artifacts. He said, please, please use your power and stop them. And Bridger's response was, how can I stop them? Your government gave them permission to be in these waters right now. And T'Pol made another plea, and then Bridger's like, oh, all right. I will just unilaterally stop everyone from coming down here. SeaQuest is now in charge. And I'm like, what? What? What do you mean you just like? Can you imagine if the UN captain off the shore of America just unilaterally decided that no Americans, no Canadians, no anyone would be able to be in this patch of water? Not, like I couldn't, and I do wish we were getting like, hey, here's exactly why Bridger has so much power. Or I'd also like to see it turn out that like Bridger was being corrupted by power. And that by not being checked, we started to see him kind of, staging a coup d'etat eventually and trying to set himself as a dictator for the world's governments. But I'm fairly confident the show doesn't go that direction.
No. I do recall that he says at the end that the library is under UEO jurisdiction, and that inside this tent, I am the UEO.
Yeah. He really makes some audacious claims from time to time. But he also continues to get the support from Admiral Noyce, the kind of the head guy at the UEO. And yes, Robert Greene, Peacock TV. I'll put a link to it here in the chat. But it is free to sign up for. It's just you give them their email address. They send you spam until you click unsubscribe, and then you have a free TV streaming service. And it has SeaQuest. I'm sure it has other things on it, but SeaQuest is what I'm most interested in right now. And then, John, one thing you sent me before the stream got started, let's see if I can do this right, this is a breakdown of different ship sizes and how things compare. Because we're kind of talking about that, especially during the pilot episode. But you can see here the original USS Enterprise is about the length of a battleship. And I want to say the USS Enterprise was one of or I guess that's an aircraft carrier. Excuse me, any Navy people, excuse me, an aircraft carrier. I want to say it was intentionally done to be about the tonnage of a aircraft carrier or a battleship, which you guys don't want to hear me going on history again. And then just below that we have the SeaQuest, and it seems to be about the same length, just a little bit shorter than an aircraft carrier. So this is a truly massive ship. I wonder if those dimensions are correct on the vertical there, John.
I was actually paying attention to it to see if they say anything about the size. I remember when the chief was leading the psychics around the ship, he said that the SeaQuest was over 1,000 feet long, which would correspond to what they have here. It looks like 307 meters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like they definitely got the horizontal down. My only question at this point is the vertical. Because it's vertical, that looks to be real close to the same vertical as I can't pronounce the name of that ship. The submarine there.
No, that's a
Russian sub.
Red October.
Oh, it's the Red October? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, they put the Russian name for some reason.
So I should have gotten that. The October there at the end. So yeah, it's vertical. The October's vertical looks to be about the same vertical as the SeaQuest. But if Darren was around, he could address this more accurately, but I'm fairly confident that life aboard a submarine is a little bit cramped, especially if you're very tall, precisely because while there are a couple decks on a sub, the decks aren't bolted ceilings. It's certainly not like the 10-foot ceiling we have in most homes. Whereas on the SeaQuest, you got a pretty good ceiling height over you. In fact, I want to say that there is a section aboard the Topang class, Topang class, Darren. I'm butchering the name of the sub you're on, but I want to say Darren told me once in the past that there is one area in which anyone over 6 foot tall could stand up unimpeded, and like that was the one area of the ship. So anyone who was aboard the sub would be able to actually stand up in that spot. So like that spot was reserved just for them, so they could have a little bit of relief every once in a while. I see Robert Green is asking how many people served on the SeaQuest, was it? John?
Yes, I remember. I think it was in the pilot they mentioned the total. It was somewhere around 200.
And let's see. I'm trying to remember. I've recently heard how many people were on a sub. It's blanking. I'm completely blanking on it. I want to say it wasn't much smaller than that. Around like 100. 100 and maybe 114. I don't know. I'll have to look up again, but that's on one of our subs, the U.S. subs. And yeah, Robert, I would have thought a lot more as well. Well, John, do you have any kind of final thoughts? We're coming up on our hour mark.
So overall, I think this episode was good improvement over last week. I think there were a couple of areas bringing it down. Overall, I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, so far, and I definitely agree. I think that the premiere episode is still my favorite so far, which we're 4 episodes in. I mean, not exact, and 2 of those episodes were a single episode, the premiere. So I've seen 3 unique episodes. I'd rank the premiere at the highest. This week's episode, Treasures of the Mind, as my second place, and then last week's episode as last place so far. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. I saw Tim just watch the whole thing, which I'm jealous, but I will commit to this. I'm going to watch this 1 episode a week, and I look forward to getting to watch the next one. And LDG is saying that the Typhoon class submarine can hold up to 160. Okay. And SeaQuest idea came from the show that the bottom sub was in, called Seaview. I guess it says it in the picture. I can barely see that. Okay. He's talking about the picture right here that the USOS, which I don't know what USOS stands for. The USOS Seaview is what inspired the SeaQuest. That's pretty cool, if that's accurate. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us for this weekly review of SeaQuest. I hope you're enjoying it, and I really hope that you take the time to go watch SeaQuest on Peacock TV, precisely because it's free to do so. I mean, if you don't want them having your email, then, I mean, use a burner email address. What are they going to care? And until the next week, I hope everyone keeps safe, and may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please share it, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that bell icon to be kept up to date with all the new videos that I release on this channel. And as always, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.